Thanks everybody for showing up to one of these at 4 o'clock. The last one of the day. Hopefully this is going to be some good material and then keep it interesting. So this is all about. How many people have heard of this? The business model canvas. All right, cool. We got one. That's good.
I filled it out.
You did. Good. Good. So chime in if you have any. How you've used it. I think that's good. Let me ask this another way. How many people have prepared a business plan? Whether it's like for creating a new business or creating a new market or moving into a new market, creating a new service and all that. Yeah, pretty good amount of it. And how many people dove in and just did one of these? Really dove in and did a lot of research and wrote it all out and did all that kind of stuff. Just dove right into it. And how many people ended up with some financial projections for the next 5 years that looked something like this? Everything's kind of going up like this. This is funny. I actually pulled this from a business plan I did for creating a new service in my company several years ago. And I thought it was fun. I was just going to make, for this presentation, just make a couple lines going up like this. And then I realized, hey, I pulled a real one. And the reason this is legit is because the profitability drops off in 2015 and 2016. I don't know. I think that's a pretty good example of what comes out of business plans. How do I know this is going to happen? How do I know it's going to happen? This Dilbert cartoon, I think, describes it really well using traditional business plans. You have the pointy-eared boss coming up to Dilbert. He says, I need you to write a business plan for one of our new lines of products. And Dilbert said, is that because business plans have a good track record of being useful and accurate? And the pointy-haired boss said, no, it's nothing like that. And Dilbert said, good, because I make up all of the numbers. That's what you see in that last graph. Whether we like to admit it or not, there's a lot of the business plans, the way they're traditionally done, it's fabricated. No one wants to admit it, but it's the truth. So hopefully I will show a little bit different way to approach this problem of writing a business plan for growing your business, whether it be entering a new market segment or if it's entering new disciplines that you want to offer, or maybe even what we talked about before in the lunch presentation, how to innovate your business model to grow. So here's kind of how this hour will go. First, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about my favorite subject, and that's me. And that's really not the truth, but just to give you a little background of why is it that I'm talking about this. Then I'm going to introduce this concept of the lean startup. Anyone ever heard of the lean startup methodology? Good. I'll just kind of give you a brief introduction because this is really central to this idea of the business model canvas and how you would use it. Then I'm going to actually walk through and show you what the business model canvas is and kind of describe what it is, and we'll walk through what it is. And another piece of this, which is a subsect of it, is this thing called the value proposition canvas that really helps you map out and define, uncover how it is that you deliver value to your customers. And then I'll talk a little bit about how you can use this tool we're going to talk about in planning for your business. That's kind of the strategic planning tool. And a good way I'm going to try to really do this is working through an example. So if you have questions along the way, then you could chime in and ask them. But I may say, what? Hang on until we get into the example, and it may answer your question. So we'll go with that. And at the end, I'll leave some resources. This is it's a whole lot to cram into an hour, kind of that hang on to your hat thing like you saw in there. And so this is an introduction. If you're really interested in this and it's something that you want to use, then I'll leave you with some resources to go do a little bit of digging yourself. Can everybody hear me well? I said I didn't need the microphone because I talked loud, so I'm just making sure I wasn't making that up. All right. Well, first let's talk a little bit about me. Me pre-glasses and beard, because I don't have my winter coat on here. So my name's Jared Jamison, and I am a registered professional engineer. So I don't do this full time, the management consulting sort of thing, or teaching these things. I'm a full-time Senior Vice President, Director of Operations at Hankins & Anderson. We're a firm out of Virginia, about 175 people. And we primarily do federal work, and our claim to fame is designing U.S. embassies. So even though we're a Virginia firm, kind of a local firm, if you will, we've worked in 154 countries. So that's a little bit about the company I work with. I'm the company's treasurer, and I'm also on the board of directors. and I have a structural engineering background. So I get involved with a lot in the business, and it's primarily just concentrated on the business now, so I don't get to practice engineering anymore, even though I want to some days. So I have just both a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from Virginia Tech, and then went back later in life and got an MBA at Virginia Commonwealth University. I don't know how many people have heard about that before until they went to the Final Four a couple years ago, so it's good for that. And also go back and spend some weekends and nights and things like that helping teach business planning at for the executive MBA program at VCU. So that's where I first got introduced to this concept of the business model canvas. They've shifted. They used to teach the traditional business planning methodologies. We would go through and we'd create these big documents, and the students would turn those in. And now they've moved more toward this lean startup methodology, and really want people to use the business model canvas to really describe their ideas and tease things out before diving into to the big business plans. So let's dive in a little bit and start and talk about what this is. So I said the first concept we have to introduce here is the concept of the lean startup. And this kind of gets to the introduction where I showed the slides, saying, hey, a lot of a business plan is fabricated because when you go into it, you really don't know. Lean startup, it came out of some ideas, some folks, so they say, you know what? When we're starting something out, we need to really accept that all we do really have is a hypothesis, right? We have this idea of how we're going to create value and how this business is going to work, but it's really just a hypothesis. It's an idea that we have. So why dive deep into the assumptions and start writing out this big business plan and do the 5 years of pro forma financials? It's funny. I have one of the guys that I teach with. He's also a commercial banker. And he said he's seen up to, people come in for loan applications, he's seen up to a 12-year pro forma financials. I mean, does anyone really believe year 12 is going to look anything like it does? So this is, the other piece about this is, how many people, when you get in and you're going to plan out entering a new market and you're going to offer new services or whatever that is, and you get a year into it, how often does that look exactly like you had planned that year to be? Yeah, it really never does. You end up getting in there and you find something and you shift and you pivot, as they say. You go in a different direction. And so this is the next big concept of this lean startup: is get out of the building, right? Don't sit at your desk and write the business plan first. Get out there and test your hypothesis. And so the next piece of this, where they really came out of the lean startup, is this idea of customer development that a guy, Steve Blank, came up with, and we're gonna talk about that here in a minute. But it really is all about getting out of the building, and it's developing your customer first before you dive deep into developing the business. The other concept that the lean startup is built around is this idea of, hey, anyone ever heard of agile project management and agile development? It came from out of the IT world, and it's all about being iterative and really making incremental progress along the way. Instead of trying to say, day one, I know exactly how the rest of this project will go, if you're talking project, to the very last date, I can plan that out every step of the way. So you want to be very agile about this and accept that all you have is hypothesis and get out there and actually try things, right? So this is a great quote. Steve Blank's the guy that came up with the idea of customer development. He said, there are no facts in the building, so get the hell out and talk to customers. So I think that's a really good way to put it, to describe this customer development. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like, customer development. So when you first go out and you have this idea, and you're going to go out and try to present this to your customers, just admit that the first thing you're trying to do is really discover what their needs are, right? You may think that you know what their needs are, but when you get in there and you actually start to provide them something, you may find out that their needs are different. So the next step, you're trying to really validate what those needs are for that customer. So you're still in this stage of searching. And this is what happens normally when traditionally, when you're going through and trying to start something new. Just recognize it's going to happen. You're going to pivot along the way, and you're going to go back, and then you're going to say, hey, I think what you need is this. And you take it back, and you go back through and try to validate your next assumption that you're trying to offer this customer, right? Only once you've gone through this and you actually validate that this is something that they need and you're going to provide this value, then you go on and start to develop that customer base. And until you have that done, then go build your company, right? Don't start building your company as step number one before you've gone through these other steps. And you'll see a lot of this happening outside of our industry. There's a lot of the Kickstarter campaigns and things like that. They're going through here. They're not spending any money at all, but they're going through and validating that there's a customer base. A lot of these things never come to fruition, but they're getting people to spend money along the way to test this hypothesis that they have that people see value in what they're offering. And they don't go in and seek funding and start building things or even build any products until they've got this validation that it's going to happen. Well, we can do that in our industry too, is what I'm arguing here. And this should be familiar to us, this line of thought. Anyone ever heard of the Design Squiggle or seen this along the way? This is something that Damian Newman came up with this. And this is really the process of design. So when we're designing buildings and working through things, this is how our thought process goes. We really start with a lot of uncertainty, right? And we're getting all the inputs and trying to make sense of it. And it's this research phase. Then the ideas get a little tighter. And you start, maybe that's a concept phase or something like that in a design. And you're basically gaining all these patterns and insights as you go through. And then you come up with a concept. And once you get that, you gain clarity and focus, and that's when you really get the design comes together. So we're wired to think this way, and we're trained to do this. So I think this is a natural fit for the way that we do it. And we should be able to understand designing a business just like we design the design projects we work on. So the lean startup, if you take that concept of customer development, you could basically describe it like this. You come up with a plan, and you have these hypotheses around it, and you design a business model around that. You go out and you test it, actually test it in the marketplace or test it with those customers, and you learn from that, and you iterate back around. So here you see the iterative process as you're really trying to figure out what happens with this. So we're going to go through this process before we dive right in thinking we know all the answers day one and start to plan the business and with the big business plan and drive on from there. This thing you see in the middle with all the letters and stuff in it, there's the business model canvas. And so I'll dive in deeper so you know a little bit more about what that is. But the whole concept, the reason that this business model canvas was developed was to help this lean startup methodology, to give people a kind of a common framework or a shared language around how it is that you're going to capture these ideas kind of iteratively along the way without diving into too much depth, and so you could visualize it and actually help design what it is you're trying to do with your business. So I didn't make this up, all right? And we would got to give credit where credit's due. This is the cover of a book, Business Model Generation, and these folks here, Alexander Osterwalder and Vase Pigner, I think I pronounced that right. These guys came up with this concept, and it's really being used a lot now, and it's being taught in business schools, like I say, at VCU. This is the way we're teaching business planning now, and it's a great book. If you're interested in this, I've got a link to where you can get this at the end of the presentation. But it's great because what it does is it talks a lot about design, about design thinking and design methodology. So I really resonated with it as an engineer, and I'm sure you guys would too. And the book is it's got a great design to it. The graphic design of the book's great. I was sitting next to my 8-year-old reading this on the couch one night, and he goes, "That looks like it's a kid's book, but it's got big words in it." So I guess it's even the design of the book's great. So it's a great book. So let's talk, I'll introduce now the business model canvas to tell you what this is. So the business model canvas it's a one-page description of your business model. It's a one-page description of how it is that you deliver value and create value and how you get paid for that value for your customers. And the way that it does that is it does it through 9 building blocks that really define how it is that you create that value for clients. And you want to always start here, right? Customer segments. You got to figure out which customers you're going to serve, or which clients. I use customers because that's the language they use here, but I like to call them clients because we have clients, not necessarily customers. Well, the next piece of this, you need to offer them, you have to have a value proposition that you're offering those customers, and they got to want, they have to want that, right? So you need to know what your value proposition is. The next step is you need to figure out how you're going to reach those. You can figure out how they're going to reach those clients. And this varies. This varies by firm, and it varies. I was talking with folks yesterday, and we're talking, do you have seller doers? Do you have full-time salespeople? And in the room, in the strategic planning session, there is 4 or 5 different ways of doing it. So recognize that and see how it plays into your business model. You also need to define what kind of relationship you want to have with them. And I'll describe that here in a little bit more in depth, because what we're going to do is zoom into each one of those boxes, and you'll see what I mean there. All of these things here, that's where the value is being created, and it's going to determine how you're going to get paid. So you want to know where your revenue streams are coming from, how you're going to be paid in this business model. The next piece that's really critical is what key resources do you need to have? What things do you need in order to deliver this value proposition that you have? And you need to know what things you need to do with those resources in order to deliver that value. So that's the key activities. You may not want to do all of these things yourself. So you need to know and actually define what it is, which partners you're going to use to help this business model create value. And ultimately, these things lead to the costs. You do that. And like this graphic, or this picture, or whatever it is, that will really, it describes it well to me, is all these pieces here, this kind of defines how it is that you're creating value, defines what that value is that you're creating for your customers, and that's how you're going to get paid. Now, the opposite side of this is the infrastructure that you need to have in place in order to deliver that value. And that's where really your costs come from. And it's just so simple that you just need this to be bigger than this. So you need to be delivering more value than the cost to do it. And that's why everybody's super successful, right? Now, it's not all that easy. I heard someone describe that once at a lunch. They said, I don't understand why this is so hard. I guess his business was super successful. He said, all you got to do is sell it for more than it costs to make it. And it's that easy. So let's dive in a little bit to each one of those building blocks, and I'll give you a little bit more background, hopefully, on what that is. So the first, kind of the biggest, hardest piece of this at the beginning is defining what that value proposition is. That's really going to be the most important thing. And it needs to link up with those customer segments that you're trying to reach with that value proposition. So this little graph that showed there that has the arrows pointing to, those things got to fit together really well. And so this piece down here, I'll introduce this other concept. There's a canvas for everything in MBA school now. This is the value proposition canvas, and it gives you a way to really think about how it is you're going to offer value and what it is your customers want from you, right? So let's dive in a little bit to that. But again, I can't take credit. There's another book for this that these guys wrote called The Value Proposition Design. This is another really good one too, and it gives you some tools to really dive a little bit deeper into what it is your clients' needs are beyond just I need drawings, right? Or I need a design. It helps you think through a little bit more about what it is that they need and how you can provide them with more value. So the way you do this is, we had the 2 pieces. We had the customer profile on the right, and we've got this value map on the right, or on the left. So for the customer profiles for each customer segment, you want to do these. And typically we think of our customers kind of right here, right? It's the jobs that they have to get done. So here it could be it's functional jobs that need to get done. They need to have a building built or a bridge built. They need plans and specifications in order to make that happen. Those are very functional things that they need from you. There could also be social needs that they have. There's some people that may hire an architect that's one of the higher design architects. And the reason that they're doing that is they want a building by that architect. They want that name on whatever it is that they're having done. They want to be able to say, I've hired this great world-renowned architect to do what it is. It's a social need of theirs. You got to understand that when you're going to provide, you're trying to figure a way to provide them value. Could also be emotional jobs that they have to get done. And I know there's a lot of engineers in the room, so that's kind of like, oh, what's that? So I won't even dive into that. But I also realize they're supporting jobs too. And so it could be like, for example, this could be, we need to make drawings and specifications for an owner, but ultimately they need a building, right? And the reason they need a building is because they're going to lease it, or something like that. So don't ever forget that they're supporting jobs to these things as well. But we need to think about it in another way too. If we're really going to try to deliver a lot of value, we need to understand also what gains they're trying to get out of from your value proposition, right? So what do the current solutions look like, and how do they not meet their needs? What are their expectations that they have out of you or others, and how can you exceed those expectations, or how can you beat it differently than your competition? Can you provide them with any savings differently than other people can? How do they define success? Really get into their heads and figure out how they design success. Can you do this easier? Can you make life easier for them? But you also need to address their pains. You need to understand what causes them pain if you're really going to provide them with good value, right? So cost is always a pain. So how can you help them on a cost side? What challenges can you help them overcome? What are their biggest challenges? What risks? Risks are always bad things. And how can you help them overcome those risks? And how can you overcome barriers that may be barriers to hiring you? What can you do with your value proposition to help them get past that barrier and hire you? And then also, what causes the negative emotions of any kind? Is it surprises, anything like that? Well, your value proposition you can describe in terms of with this value map, right? And it's how are you going to address that? So what services are you going to provide that customer in order to get those functional jobs done or those social jobs done, where you've defined what the jobs they need to get done? How are you going to have gain creators that really address those things that they see as super positive, right? That these are the gains above and beyond that I would like to have. What are you going to offer in order to to address that for them? And how are you going to relieve their pain? We've gone through and identified what their pains are. How are you going to relieve them? And again, I'll work through an example here in a little, and hopefully it'll start to come together and make a lot of sense. But I think you get the idea. It's diving a little bit deeper into the head of the customer. So we have these next two pieces. We've got the customer relationships and the channels. These are really the ways that you're going to link up that value proposition to the customer segments that you have. The channels, they're both direct and indirect, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but you work directly sometimes with those customers, but then sometimes you work indirectly with them too. Sometimes you may talk with them directly, or you may reach them indirectly through things like thought leadership and things like that. Recognize what it is based on their needs that you need to do to reach them is really the point of that. And then customer relationships. Here, this is what kind of relationship are you going to have with that customer? Because it's different. Your business model that you're going to design is going to be different depending on that relationship. A lot of times we're the trusted advisor, right? That looks very different than a transactional sort of relationship. And you may think, well, we never transactional, right? I think sometimes we are, and particularly in more price-driven sort of markets. There's a lot of times there's a transactional thing. And you want to design your business model different, because ultimately in the end, what you want to do is map this all out and define it, and then go through and ask yourself the question, does each one of these blocks link up and support one another? Because if not, you can probably change a piece of that and create more value with your business and more value for your business, right? And when you're thinking of customer relationships, don't just think of that first contact, how you get it. You got to think about how you're going to go out and get them, how you're going to retain them and keep them, and how you're going to grow the business with them, right? So just keep that consciously in mind as you're defining this. So I talked a little bit about direct and indirect customers. Sometimes you got more than one customer, right? You may have one paying customer, But when you're thinking about your business model, you want to really be successful, you need to think upstream from that too. You have more than one customer. And this is a pretty easy example here where you have, say you're an engineer, right? And you've got an architect as a direct client. They pay you to do that. And they really want high quality engineering from you, right? And you're a trusted advisor to them, and that's how this relationship has been formed. And you reach them through a principal. The principal has that relationship with them, and that's really the primary sales channel that you have with them. But you also have to recognize that's not your only customer. And the owner of this building that's hiring the architect, they're also one of your customers. And it may look very different, the value that you're providing them. It may be that they're a developer. They really only care about lowest first cost design. And this may be the only time that architects work with that owner. And this is going to be very transactional in nature. And the channel that you use, the sales channel, is that architect. And so that's really important to keep in mind as you're going through and saying, what are these new markets that I'm going to be entering or services, to recognize who all those customers are and how you can fold that into the business model. All right, so all that stuff will lead to revenue streams. And the revenue streams here typically is professional service fees, right? It could just be fixed fee or cost plus, whatever that is. But there's other ways to be paid here. And we don't do a lot of this, but I think that if we do start figuring ways to do some of this, you heard some of it at lunch, there's a ton of value that can be created. Maybe it'd be licensing fees or something like that you get paid for the work that you're creating. Or maybe you get recurring revenue streams off savings, things like that. Or maybe even paid for performance of your design, as opposed to just getting paid by the hour or just getting paid the fixed cost fees. Again, I think Parsons had some really cool examples of how they innovated a business model. So I went out and talked to the guy, and this is one of the tools. They said, yeah, we use this. We don't mandate this, but it's, yeah, some people are comfortable using this tool to really look at their business models and ask the questions, how can we innovate it? All right, so now we look on the infrastructure side, and we've got key activities and key resources, right? By far, here's one of our biggest key resources is a tangible. It's funny, on the balance sheet, we call human resources intangible because they're not captured on the balance sheet, but they're tangible resources, they're people, right? This is something that one of the biggest ones that we have, but there's also intangible resources that you have to have within your company. So brand is a big one. Depending on, if you're gonna have this trusted advisor, you're gonna be trying to sell through thought leadership and things like that, brand is gonna be a big resource that you need to think about and design your business around it. Also, the knowledge that you have may be very important, or probably is very important, and then also the trust. So you don't think of trust as a resource, but it really is, and it helps drives value. Now, the key activities, these are the things you need to do really well, and a lot of times this ends up just being kind of problem solving. By our nature, here's what we do is define problems and then solve them, or it could be just production that we need to do. So again, you want to really think hard about what it is, what things that you need to do, what it is. If you talk from strategy, if it was in the strategy section yesterday, we talked a little bit about Michael Porter. He's all about activities. Whatever value you're going to uniquely provide to your clients, you need to make sure those activities are totally synced up with what that is, and that they're different, that you do things differently. So be thinking about that as you're working through this. The key partners, these are the things you're not going to do in-house. It may be that you're trying to obtain a key resource or a key activity from outside of the company. You may want to do that because the people you're not quite yet at the scale at which it makes sense to do it in-house, and you can get economies of scale from going outside. You may want to do it to reduce risk. I know we do this a lot in our profession. And again, if you can't find it within your company, it may be just as good to get it, especially if it's unique, somewhere else. And you take all of that infrastructure, and that's what really drives the cost that you have in your business. And I think it's important to recognize here, there's two ways to win, and it's either win by value or win by cost, either reducing cost or increasing the value that you have. And just be cognizant of that. If you're a cost-driven business, you really want to focus on this infrastructure side here and how it is that you're going to reduce cost. And if you're going to be value-driven, and that's how you're going to win. Be concentrating on the value side, that right side of your business model. All right, so I know when we talk about this, everyone a lot of times will say, "Well, what about competition?" We were doing a business plan. You didn't even mention competition. Well, the business model canvas is really set up to be like the internal look at your business. You can't ever miss out on what the external forces are on your business. So you got to keep in mind things like the forces of the industry. Competition is a piece of that, as well as the power of the people that are buying the services for you, or of the labor pool that you're hiring, things like that. You need to understand in the industry or in the markets that you're pursuing what those forces are. Also, the macroeconomic forces of what's going on in the world and how's that going to affect your business. Keep in mind key trends and how that's going to affect your business over the next several years, and then also just the market forces that are at work, the changing market of your clients. So what you're really doing is you've come up with this hypothesis. The first step of what you're going to do as you come up with a hypothesis for a business model is test it with the external forces. Ask yourself, how is what's going on in the environment syncing up with this new thing that I'm trying to do? It sounds complicated, but it's relatively quick when you get in to do it. That's the whole point of this versus the whole business plan. If you were going in and doing a detailed business plan, you should be answering all these questions and diving into it in depth. This just helps you hopefully provide something to do it a little bit quicker as a first step. So that's as a first step, I think is pretty key. I can't go there yet to say the business plan is totally useless or anything like that, as some people say. I do think it's very important, and it's not really the act of having the plan, but the act of planning. This is a step in the planning. So here you could think where you're iterating through a couple business models, and that'll get you to this point at which you're able to develop the business. If you think back to the customer development kind of timeline, and at that point you can translate what it is that you enter into a more operational business plan. If you need to sell this to your board of directors, you need to get financing for it or whatever that is, then you may very well have to do this. And there's importance in it too. This is just helping you don't waste all the time up front doing that detailed planning until you get to something that you're actually going to be able to create value with that. So clear as mud, right? I'm going to dive in and do an example, and I think it'll crystallize it a little bit more. But be thinking about this as we work through the example. Here's some ways you can use this, right? You could use this to plan new market segments or services. And what you're trying to do here on these first couple steps in that graph is try to really answer the questions, the really important things. What assumptions are you making, and what's the hypothesis that you need to come up with? And what ways are you going to test it? So this helps you really zoom in on the important questions to ask. I use that example. We started talking about using this at Hankins and Anderson, and one of the first things that came up was, hey, we're going to look at construction management as a new service. It was kind of an opportunistic thing because it came up, and pretty quickly we had to say, what does this look like, and how's it going to affect our business? What are the big questions we need to ask? And my daughter was in dance, and I left work, and she was going to be in there for a while, and we were going to meet at a Mexican restaurant. So I had about an hour, and I sat in the parking lot and used this tool with sticky notes and went through, and it provided amazing clarity. I knew the next day going in, here's all the questions I think we need to answer before we want to know if we want to do this as a service. So it really points you really quickly to the questions that you should be asking. So I see it as a good tool for that. This is a great tool to use as a common language, as a standard idea template. So we're starting to use this at H&A like this. Coming out of strategic planning, people have ideas for new market segments we want to enter. Use this framework so we have a common language to describe it. We hit on this a little bit again at lunch. This is a great tool to put up and get a room of people together and brainstorm and ask yourself questions about how can we innovate this business model? What can we do differently? And just ask what ifs on each one of these blocks. What if we wanted recurring revenue streams? How would we have to change the rest of the business to do this? And what assumptions would we have to go verify with our customers? So I think it's a good way to do that. It's a good way to really scan your environment by using this in the external forces that you have, by being able to describe your business model and see what those external forces do. A couple other ways, I haven't done this yet, but it's I think it would be pretty interesting to do, is you can better understand your competition by sketching out their business models, but maybe even more importantly than that, maybe you can understand your customers better by going through and really trying to figure out what creates value for them and how you can sync your business model up to create that value for them. That sounds a lot like what the examples, one of the examples that Parsons had today about with the telcos. You know, that sounded a lot like that. If you were to take customers and really try to define what that was, this could be a really good tool to help you do it. So let's work through an example. I showed this with sticky notes up there, and the reason I do that is you really want this to be kind of transient. So yeah, I'm going to show PowerPoint pieces, but I can delete those just as easy as pull a sticky note off. You really do want to keep this kind of fluid until you solidify your ideas. So each one of these little sticky notes is an assumption. You can look at it that way, but that's kind of the visual there. The folks that came up with this, they have big boards and big sticky notes, and really say you're not doing this right unless you're using sticky notes to really work through the iterations of your business model. So I'm going to use an example of green and greener designs. So did anyone go to the thing in Florida last year at this conference? So I spoke about using the balanced scorecard, something else we do at Hankins and Anderson, and I used green and greener designs, just a company I made up as an example there. So I'm hoping that those two things link up, and one day I'll start green and greener designs, but no, I probably won't. But you can go back and look at that, and you can see how these two things tie together. They're basically just a small local firm that does architecture and engineering services, and they're all about sustainability, and they think that's their differentiator, right? Is the relationships they create with these green developers and all that. So that's the context we're going to use for example. They're going in, they're trying to figure out how do we grow. So right, they're in the strategic planning area, and I'll show you how they may have used this business model canvas for an idea that they had. So first thing you got to do is look at your existing business model and try to define how it is that they create value. Well, here's what it is. Their customer segments, they're green developers, right? They're the folks that are out selling LEED certified buildings to their customers, and it's very important to them. And what the value that they provide them, the basic jobs that they're doing for them, is they provide new facility design. So they're doing new facilities for these green developers, and it's really all about sustainable design that they're offering for these folks. But it's only on the new project. It's only on new buildings. The relationship they have is very trusted. It's a trusted advisor relationship, and the way that they're reaching them now is through principals directly, but then it's also thought leadership. You know, it's going to have a hard time being known as the experts in sustainability without thought leadership. And for all of this, they get paid professional service fees just like the majority of us do, right? The resources they need to have in place, they got to have the people in place and the right engineers and architects. They have a brand that's very important through this thought leadership to reach these green developers. And the things that they really need to do, well, it's solve problems like a lot of us do, but it's also relationship building, because part of their whole philosophy is building these long-term sustainable relationships with these folks as well, and being trusted advisors. And they hire sub-consultants like a lot of us. You translate all to that, and their costs look probably a whole lot like ours. It's labor and non-labor overhead sorts of costs, right? So they have an idea. They say, what? We only do new buildings for these green developers. Well, what are their needs? So they go through and they use this. They use their the customer mapper, and they want to go through and look at what are the needs. Well, the needs of these developers, they really need to build the buildings, they need to lease them, and they need to maintain them, right? Those are their primary big needs. Things that would really surprise them, the gains that they're really looking for. If these buildings that they have can create high profit, it's good. It's a big gain for them. Also, if it's sustainable, it's something that they really want and really desire, and that's LEED certified. These are things that are big gains for what they want. Well, the pains that really bother them when they're working on these kind of projects, things like cost overruns, if they're missing schedules, the maintenance is actually a big pain for them. And then surprises are a really big pain for them. They don't like surprises at all. They're developers. They got to have it. They got to have it figured out, right? Well, here's what the value proposition for green and greener designs currently looks like. They're going to provide design and contract documents and CA services for these green developers. So this is pretty important. Yesterday in the strategy session too is another favorite Michael Porter thing is that strategy is just about figuring out what not to do is what to do. So you don't want to necessarily meet all the needs of your customers. You need to choose which ones you are. So currently they're choosing to just meet the need of just building the buildings, helping them build the buildings, right? They're addressing the gains of not necessarily the high profit of this, but they're directly addressing the sustainable and the LEED certified piece of this by really their ability to do this innovative, sustainable designs and all their LEED certified folks that they're doing that will get these credentials for them. And they're creating documents of high quality to relieve the pains of cost overruns and surprises that the developer really causes the developer a lot of pain. So they have this idea. They say, hey, what about the existing buildings? These developers own existing buildings as well, and we're only getting the new facilities, and we want to continue to grow these relationships. So why don't we offer retro commissioning as a new service for these developers? And here, the color coding, the red are things that are new, things that are changing. So they would go through and say, what does that look like on our business model if we want to do that? Well, in order to do that, we would need a commissioning expert to really reach these people to be able to sell it and talk about what it is that they do. And for this, we'd probably be paid fees in order to do this retro commissioning kind of design and service around that. Well, this new commissioning expert is going to be a new cost, so they're going to need to figure that into their business model to see if these commissioning services fees are going to exceed the cost of this new expert. And then you also got to get the expertise in-house, and the way they're going to do that through that expert. So here's their hypothesis of how they think they're going to create value for that. So they could have just stopped where it was right there, and then went back and got into the spreadsheets and start doing 5-year pro formas. I don't know if anyone's done business plans, but that's maybe it's a level of comfort, but you dive into the financials and kind of prove what you need, and then start to work the rest of it out like that. But no, what they're going to do here is really dig deep into what their assumptions are. And so what they're doing here with this new value proposition of retro commissioning services is they're trying to address some of these unmet needs that they had before. They're going to help them better maintain these buildings, right? And by doing that, they're going to address these pains of cost overruns and maintenance through the decreased maintenance that they would get by providing them with retro commissioning services. By doing this, they're going to help the profit of the green developers, and this will also help the sustainability piece of this as they make their buildings more energy efficient. So the way they're creating those gains is by providing them with these designs that'll decrease their cost and increase profit and increase the efficiencies of their buildings. So then they go and they talk to their developer clients about this and say, hey, how do you like this service idea? And well, there's a couple other pains that they missed here that come out. The first is there's risk because they're like, well, what happens if I pay you for the design and I don't get the savings? And you can say, yeah, but you always get the savings. But they're not convinced, right? So there's risk associated with that. And that risk is a big pain to them. And the other piece of it's the capital. They don't have money in their budget to pay you a design to go in and redo these, their systems, and to pay someone to come in and retweak their systems. And so that's a need, or it's a pain of theirs. That's a barrier. They can't get over that barrier. They're not going to hire you because they don't have the capital to do it. So they need to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how can I address those pains? So they iterate to this second, or they pivot back to this second business model. And they have this idea, like, hey, anyone know what ESCOs are? Energy service companies. They just say, why don't we partner with an ESCO? And they're all about providing energy savings for a return over time. And what we'll do is create a business partnership relationship with these folks. And what we'll do is offer this retro commissioning service, but we're going to sell we're going to do this retro commissioning design free to our developers, and then we're going to sell it to the ESCOs as a lead, right? And then they're going to be, the ESCOs will pay us professional service fees. So that's their second idea of how it is that they're going to execute this business model and grow their business. Again, we're still not diving in deep to the business or to the business plan and doing this. So they go back. They go back to this to look deep at a customer because they have a new customer now. The new customer is the ESCO, right? So what are their needs? Well, the kind of jobs they have to do, they need to educate folks about this, about the benefits to these energy savings contracts. They need to go in and provide an audit to get a baseline of where they are and come up with where they can get savings to if this thing's actually going to work or not. They got to go through and design they need to go through and design new things or new systems put into buildings. They need to install them and they need to monitor them and ultimately get paid for it. So the things that they really desire, the things that are gains for them are, again, high profitability. They're in this to make money. And the primary way they do this is with big projects. They need big projects to do this, the customers that they're approaching with this idea. Things that really cause a lot of pain for them is risk, like anyone else. But it's certain kind of risk. They don't want to be wasting effort because they have kind of precious little time to do this. So they don't want to waste any of their effort. And even more important than that, they don't want to waste any investment in this because that's their primary function here is going to be to make money over a long period of time with that. So the idea that they had for this value proposition of the retro commissioning energy savings performance contracts is that, hey, we're going to sell these developed leads to the ESCOs, and we're going to, by doing that, we're going to basically address these two jobs that they need to get done to educate their clients because they already have the relationship with these developers, and then to go through and kind of provide this first step of an audit to see if this is something that would even work. So they're going to save the wasted effort from the ESCO's standpoint because they're not putting anything in up front, any effort up front. So they're going to minimize that wasted effort. They're going to create a new gain. They think they're going to help the ESCOs be more profitable by bringing them new customers and kind of bringing them to their doorstep, right? So that's their idea. So they talk to the ESCOs about this and realize, no, they don't want that. They don't want that. That's not how they make money. Other things are much more important to them. The large projects is one thing. They don't have time to waste on these smaller things. They want big scale, large projects. They don't want to just do retro commissioning sort of things. They want to put in new systems into these buildings. And because of that, they want to concentrate. They don't want to waste any investment. So the first idea they had really didn't address that need. So what they decided to do here is to go through and offer them free energy audit leads. So they're going to do free energy audits of their customers and offer this to the ESCOs. They're going to give them really developed leads. They're going to do this initial stage of design to come up, hey, we got a project that we know will work and our customer's going to buy it. They just don't have the money, but you're going to provide them the money and this is going to pay off for you in the future. So here they potentially get these new big projects at no cost. And that's the second way they iterate through this. So here's how the business model looks now. They're now going to offer these free energy audits free to the developers. So it's a new cost associated with them. They're now doing these audit studies at risk, right? They're doing design at risk and they're not getting paid for it. So it's a cost that the business needs to consider. They're going to offer the developed energy savings performance contract leads to these ESCOs, again as a business partner relationship, and that's going to flow through the principals. And the way that they think they're going to get paid for this is brokerage fees, right? So we're going to bring you this great idea, give us a cut of it up front, and we're going to basically sell you a lead. And that's their idea. So they go through and look at that, and they ask themselves the question, does the brokerage fee cover the audit study that they're going to do at risk? And they're not quite convinced they can get there, so they got to go back and iterate again. They never would have gotten through all this if they had started just diving right into the business plan from day one, right? So then they go back through and look and they say, all right, what can we do? What can we do different here? Well, you know what they do or what they need that we do? Design, right? Maybe we can provide another service for them, and that's design. And if we can do that, we're selling some new value to them. We're selling them new customers, kind of the same sort of thing. But we're also going to address the design component of this, because that's a need that the ESCO has. And that still helps the same kind of things that they have. So here you're offering a new job to them. You're offering design services to the ESCO. And they're finally starting to whittle it down in how they think they're going to make this new business idea work. And then they get to, here's what they end up doing. We're finally there. And what they're going to do here is offer free energy audits to their developers, right? And they're going to sell that relationship through developed leads to the ESCO. But the way they're going to get paid for it is by offering the design services for designing all that new equipment for the ESCO. And they're going to get paid professional service fees. Now they're back in their comfort zone. And they're fairly certain that the professional service fees that they're going to be able to capture from this are going to exceed what they spend in upfront costs doing audits for this. And these elements that are different colors, this is all they really need to change for their existing business model in order to make this work. So at this point, they go out and start experimenting, trying some projects, things like that, then go through and start developing a real detailed business plan. So everyone see how that kind of works and how it helps you is by not digging too deep, but by really asking yourself questions, keeping it kind of forces you to think strategically, keeps it high level. It forces you to ask the right questions and helps you develop what could be, at least for your business, a more innovative business model for creating value and help you find a way to grow. You know, they could have even done this differently. You know, maybe they want to do this in the future. Well, what if we got paid? We can kind of get in on their action too, and we just want to get recurring revenue. We could get paid recurring on the savings right along with the ESCO, right? And if we do that, we're going to be designing at risk. And do we know if this is going to exceed this? Yeah, except this is up front and this occurs along the way. So we now all of a sudden have a new resource needs capital to be able to do that. So they're not ready to go there yet. But when they throw this up and spitball ideas, those kind of things start to come out for how to do that.
It seems like there's one item missing, the risk of not being able to sell the free audit to the customer.
Sure.
And then you have to build that into, somehow that's another cost that's going to be added, like a percent, some assessment of that risk.
Yeah. So for them, I guess in this example, it was they were really hesitant of how this was gonna work, and so there's really no, other than marketing cost of this. You already have these relationships in place. The costs would be pretty minimal for them. They're going and saying, hey, is this something that you want to buy or not? At this point, they've really not invested any money other than time in order to do that. They haven't hired anybody new on board or anything like that to make it happen. But that's one of the assumptions that they would have to verify by working through it. And so, as they were talking to the developers, you know, a couple steps back, that would have been one of the assumptions that they had to go through and verify that would come out of this. Anybody else have any questions on this? I ran through it pretty quickly. It's a lot of information, but do you see how this would work and how it kind of forces to keep it strategic? We've had a lot of luck with this. We have an internal training program, like the internal university kind of thing, called the H&A MBA that we do. And so we'll teach, it stands for more business acumen. We'll teach we'll teach people within the firm kind of business concepts and things like that. And they'll have a project that comes out of that. And the ones that we've been doing the past couple of years have been, hey, how would you propose we grow the business? Come up with an idea for a new service, maybe a new geography that we would move into, or a new market that we want to pursue, and do some research and try to figure out what it is we would do. And we told them to use this format to do it. And we taught them how to use this. And I tell you, it seems like it's a pretty powerful tool. You put it up on a board, a big whiteboard, and you start going to town and start brainstorming through it. And it's amazing how quickly you can get to solutions by using this as opposed to the big deep dive right off the bat. So we see it as a really good tool and have had success with it, and we'll keep using it. So, anyone else have any questions? If not, I'll leave you with some resources. If you do have a question, you get to use the mic for these guys. So now, well, here's some resources for this. If you're interested in this concept and want to learn more, it's I gave you kind of a quick preview of it, but there's some other resources where you can really dive in a little bit deeper into this. The first is where when I talk about customer development and this idea of the lean startup. There's a great article here in Harvard Business Review, Why the Lean Startup Changes Everything. This is a really good paper to kind of wet your whistle for it. Then there's these two books that I put the covers up for, the Value Proposition Design and Business Model Generation. They really dive deep and describe this in more depth. But the other good thing that they do is they really provide you some good tools of how you would use this in an interactive session. They say, hey, set the room up like this and get these people in the room and brainstorm through sessions like this, ask these questions, and a lot of good tools for how you would use this. And you can find these at businessmodelgeneration.com. I'm not affiliated in any way with these guys. I'm not getting paid for it or anything. I just find it really interesting and really love this stuff. So that's a good website, and they've got some tools and things available there, including the first part of that book, Business Model Generation. They have it free. So it's pretty good. Does anyone else have any other questions beyond that? Another resource is me. Feel free to, if you ever have any questions, send me an email. I don't think I have my email up there, or maybe it's on the initial slide. If not, just come get a card, because I like talking about this stuff. So I'd be more than happy to help if you're interested in using this as a planning tool of your business. All right, cool. Well, everyone, enjoy the happy hour tonight. See you there.